my name's Miranda, and today I am here to review My Plain Jane by Brody Ashton, Jody Meadows, and Cynthia Lord. This is the sequel of sorts, not related to the first book, but it is in the series of My Lady Jane, which came out in 2016 and was a book I absolutely loved. I just think it was so different from anything else I had ever read, and I was really excited when it was announced that there would be 2 more books in the series focusing on other historical Janes. So for My Plain Jane, the book itself focuses on the renowned Jane Eyre and also her creator, Charlotte Bronte. So the book places them in a world basically where they exist together, except Jane Eyre is Jane Freyre, and I personally have never read Jane Eyre. I was supposed to in school, but that was one book I was just like, I don't like, ew, like Mr. Rochester, no thank you. So I don't really know a lot about Jane Eyre. I know things that happen because we discussed it in my class that we were supposed to read it in, and I was just like, yep, sounds good. And I think much like the historical aspects of Jane Grey in the first book, this book does a good job of kind of waiting in between, like paying homage to things that happen in Jane Eyre and kind of changing it and pointing out things that don't make sense as well. Also being amazing and awesome. So one aspect that really drives this whole thing from Jane Eyre is the ghosts. So what I didn't realize was this is, I think you can really call it a ghost story. Like, it's so much more supernatural than I was expecting it to be, which I don't know why I didn't expect it to be, since like that was all My Lady Jane was, like magic and amazing stuff that happened. So I don't know why I was like, oh, it's just gonna be a normal story. I should have known, but I really liked it. It reminded me a lot of this book by Maureen Johnson that I read in like, oh gosh, in like middle school. It's called The Name of the Star, and that also takes place in London, and it's about these ghost hunters that are hunting the ghost of Jack the Ripper, who's committing murders that look similar to his other murders, you know? So it reminded me a lot of that book, which I really liked, because it's about this, aside from Jane and Charlotte, it's about this society of ghost hunters who work in London, and they were at one time highly respected by the king, but when the old king died and the new one took over, he kind of cut their funding, so they've been struggling to move on and kind of regroup and gain the respect and the money that they need to put on a really good society, but they are still part of society. They're still well known that there are ghosts, and they are called upon when there's something wrong in the neighborhood. I really did like that aspect, and I liked bringing Jane and Charlotte into it, because like originally I was like unsure how I felt about having both Jane and Charlotte, and I will say for like the first few chapters, and by few I mean like 100 pages, I definitely was like, we don't need Charlotte in this book. Like, it could have just been about Jane. And then something flipped completely where like I really loved Charlotte's story and her character, and I didn't care as much for Jane. So it was interesting in that aspect that I was like, it doesn't really need Charlotte, and then all of a sudden I was like, no, I need Charlotte with my life. And there's not too much I can say about it without spoiling it, because some of the greatness of it is just the lunatics that happen and stuff like that, like that you do not see coming at all. But basically, it is a ghost story. They get wrapped up into it. Do with that what you will, knowing about everything that's in Jane Eyre and Charlotte Bronte's life. Obviously, I knew more about Jane Eyre and Charlotte Bronte than I did about Lady Jane Grey, like all that stuff I looked up. So I feel like this stuff was definitely, you could catch the Easter eggs they put in a lot more, and there were so many Easter eggs that I loved. There was just things that were weird in Jane Eyre that were explained better in here where they came from. There were a lot of nice Easter egg cameos of like characters from classic novels and other books that you might recognize or maybe not. I don't know if you'll recognize some of them, but it was really delightful to see some of that stuff and kind of recognize it as you're reading it and be like, I know this thing. I will say it wasn't as great as My Lady Jane for me, and I just think that's because My Lady Jane came out of left field. Like, I had heard about it obviously, but like I just wasn't expecting that book to be as great and as like effervescent as it was. Like, it just came completely out of left field. Even as I'm reading it, I'm like, this is amazing. Whereas with My Plain Jane, I knew more of what I was getting into. I had higher expectations for it, and I do think even with those expectations, I think I'm confident in saying My Lady Jane was a better book. I just felt like it was more cohesive, and there weren't parts that like I was like, oh, you know, like I didn't always love the characters in My Plain Jane. I went through a lot of love-hate with them where I did not in My Lady Jane. So I think that's one thing that was different, but I did really, really love this book. I think it had a cute romance that I will not spoil at all, but was so, so adorable. I think it also did a really good job, again, which is what I loved with My Lady Jane, of pointing out like the stupidities of the time period, because obviously My Lady Jane was a bit before this, probably like, was it a lot? Or here's where Miranda's AP World History thing fails her. Characters are two women, and it's still a time when women aren't treated the best or respected the best, and that is one thing that definitely factors in, and I love that the authors always make sure to point out the fact that, like, okay, this is how it is, but like, that's super messed up that this is how it is. Like, girls shouldn't have to be forced to run around in corsets and not be able to join certain things just because they're girls. I really, really like that, and I love the setting of London, much like Jane Eyre was, so I'm interested to see, because I think the third book, Calamity Jane, I don't think that's set in London. She's got to be like either American or Canadian or something like that, so I don't know, but it'll be interesting, because like one of the things that makes these books so quaint and cute is the London setting for me. I mean, maybe if you live in London, you're like, yeah, this is my life and there's nothing new, so maybe the American book will be great for you. It probably won't. I just really, really love this book. I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it wasn't as great as I was expecting it to be, but I think that was just kind of because it took me an adjustment period to get used to the characters, and like I said, there was a little back and forth, and like, do I like you? Do I not like you? Like, it took me a while to warm up to the characters. There was definitely a certain character, I'm not gonna name who it was, but like, I just could not stand them for a while, and then they finally kind of redeemed themselves, but for a while I was just like, what's the point of you aside from moving the story along? So I really, really did like My Plain Jane. It was cute, it was different, it was as adorable as My Lady Jane was, and I really loved the ghost aspect of it. I think that made it so much cooler, and also gave it like this like edgy feel, supernatural feel that I wasn't expecting from it, which was really, really cool, but then also paid homage to Jane Eyre, because ghosts are kind of a somewhat plotline in Jane Eyre, so I guess so like in a way like it made sense, but also it was something that like I never expected or anticipated, so I really, really did enjoy it. Please feel free to leave your thoughts about it down below in the comments. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel down below to be told to make all sorts of new videos, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!